What did people find? Does anyone want to share their initial analyses? Did anybody find their hypotheses were or were not supported?
I felt like height did play a role in their jump height. Like there seemed to be a positive relationship between the two.
So that is something that we actually typically do find. What's going to be interesting is we're going to look at that in more detail in a few moments. But let me double check. Yeah, so we have about an hour here. We're going to look at height versus jump from a few different angles. And I think you're going to find there's something fascinating going on. And why it's always important to kind of look at things and then look deeper and see sometimes things are more complicated than you might think. But yeah, no, I saw that in our data as well. It's seen, in fact, honestly, that was the only thing that looked interesting at first look. And did anybody, what did other people look at?
I did calf circumference and on jump height, and I did not find a correlation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you look at calf versus jump, it looks pretty just kind of random. So what we're going to do now, I should say, in most experiments, people often start using kind of a small number of subjects just to kind of get a sense of like, how does this work? Does it even look like it's going to be interesting? Because doing experiments takes a lot of time, usually money. So people often do what's called like a pilot study, which is kind of a small scale thing to just get a sense of what's going on here. Does this look worth going deeper in? But then if you really want to get more usable results, you need more subjects. And we talked about there just being the randomness that you can't control, the people who are more tired or less tired or who are this or that. And the more people you have, the more likely it is that the people, all these random sources of variability will cancel out. Like the people who are jumping higher because they're just feeling more awake versus the people who are jumping less high because they're really just tired that day, they'll cancel each other out and you'll start still seeing the underlying real trends showing up. So in general, you want to have as many subjects as possible. The more subjects you have, the more likely, if there is something there, it's going to show up in a way that's clear and that you can say, like, this is statistically significant. You do the math and it says, like, this doesn't just seem to be due to randomness. This seems to be due to some actual effect. So what we're doing in this lab is I had you analyze the data, and just, I saw, was it Chris? One, I felt a little bad. Some people did a lot more work than others. I just wanted you to kind of look at one variable in your thing. But if you did all of them, that's also cool. But for the next part, I'm going to have you have a much larger data set. It's a data set from a bunch of different labs. So now instead of just like 25 subjects, we're going to have like almost 100 subjects. Instead of doing it all by hand, I wanted you to do by hand just so you trust yourself and know that if some people start getting like feeling helpless, like I can't make a graph, I'm not at my computer. It's like, sure you can, it's easy, you just did it. So from now on, if you just need to make a small graph, you can just draw it, it's easy. But if you are graphing hundreds of points, it's not easy, it's a pain in the ass. So you're gonna use the Excel program to be doing graphs. Excel is also really nice because it will do these best fit lines and make it clearer if there is a relationship, a trend or there or not. It also allows you to rearrange your data easily, sort it by BMI or this or that. So do averages really easy. What's the average jump of just the men versus the women or this or that? So Excel, is there anybody here who's never used Excel?
Me.
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 Right. So normally we're like in the classroom where people can, I tell, like sit next to somebody who's good with Excel. You know, there is a lot of stuff online to get you up to speed in Excel, and the basics of it are very simple. I'm going to do a really quick overview of what it is for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And then what we're going to do is just, I'm going to show you some different ways to use it with our data. But ultimately what you are going to be doing, before we get into the Excel, get into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, let me tell you the bigger picture of what we want to do. So today, use Microsoft Excel to examine larger data set, you know, from multiple classes. So we're going to be similar, you know, similar to what you did for your initial analysis, but now we're going to like really crank it up. We're going to, instead of just that small group of data, we're going to have way more data. Instead of graphing it by hand, we're going to use Excel because it's just going to make it way easier. It'll also, again, like I said, it's going to make it easier to ask more complicated questions and rearrange the data and things like that. And then what I want you to do is, you know, look at your hypothesis again. So now you can do exactly what you did for this initial analysis, but now do it with this larger data set. And you can see similar conclusions to this, you know, initial analysis. So you can ask yourself, are your conclusions when you use the small data set the same as the conclusions that you are coming to when you're looking at this larger data set? But then I'm going to say also, because now we have this system that makes it easy to look at things. I didn't want you to just be making graph after graph by hand and take up a lot of time when, you know, there are these tools to speed things up here for you. So for now that you have Excel, which can make these graphs and look for trends really easy, you know, look at all the variables. You know, not just your hypothesis. Because the fact is, whenever you do experiments, often the thing that's most interesting isn't actually what you were looking for in the first place. So you got all this data. So now you're going to sit with it, play with it. What can I find here? What is there? Even if your hypothesis, you know, somebody said they looked at their calf versus jump and bupkis, like, okay, that's disappointing. I had my hypothesis and the data says it doesn't really seem to be supported, but maybe there is something there interesting. I got all this data, let's not throw it away. Look at all the variables. Look at height, look at weight, even if they weren't your original hypothesis. You know, also anything else that you want to. You know, it could be male versus female.
That's what I was gonna say.
You know, And then I'm going to show you there's interesting ways you can actually separate the data. Like you can, in fact, I'll show you two examples this afternoon or this morning where we can take something like, was it Brittany, you said you looked at the calf versus jump? So we could look at calf versus jump, but let's separate it. Let's look at calf versus jump for the healthy BMI people versus the unhealthy BMI people and see if, because there that, it makes sense that that might be different. Calf for healthy BMI is more likely muscle. So we might expect a different relationship between calf versus jump for healthy BMI people versus unhealthy BMI people. It turns out it's going to be pretty easy to look at that with Excel. And I am going to kind of show you how this works. So are there questions about our larger goals for today?
Dr. Egert, we don't have the subject's ages, right? Because that would be something interesting to look at, but I don't think we have that data.
Yeah, we don't have that. So that's going to be a uncontrolled source of variability.
Okay.
So again, you're going to look at your hypothesis again, but then go further. You're going to just look at all the variables, height, weight, BMI, calf, and then anything else as well. You can, be curious. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend a few minutes just giving you some quick background in what Excel is and how it works. Then I am going to show you, and I mean, that's the weird thing about, normally if we were in person at school, we'd be in the computer lab and we'd kind of all be sitting at terminals and we're working together and this and that. But I think what makes sense is I will just show you some basic approaches. I'll show you how to make a basic scatter plot to do a simple comparison of two variables. I'll show you how to do sorting of things so you can kind of arrange things like by BMI or by sex. I'll show you how to create like bar graphs by doing categories. And then I'll show you a little more subtleties that you can do, like separate different groups within scatter plots to look for trends, like with men versus women, but for the same independent variable versus dependent variable. So once you see all of these, you can figure out what's the one that you want to use. You can kind of go back and see how I'm doing it. I also uploaded a thing. In fact, let me show you. Let me share screen. I do not want. Okay, I'm gonna go. Wait a second. All right, so we're gonna go into modules. Jumping lab. So this is continuing analysis of the jumping lab. And once you're done doing all this extra analysis and you write up your total conclusions for everything, then you'll turn in the total thing, which is not going to be for a couple of weeks. But here, continuing analysis. So just here is the compiled jumping lab data from the 3 different sections. We'll go into this in just a moment. It says, be sure you download and open in Excel. If you open it from within the web browser, it's just this like preview thing, which does not give you the full functionality. So make sure you download the Excel spreadsheet and open it up in Excel. And if you don't have Excel, you have access to it through your being a comm student. If you're having trouble with that, let me know, or look, there's information on like module 0 on how to make sure you get your Microsoft Office stuff going. It says here, all highlighted, regardless of your hypothesis, make sure you analyze the data to look for trends regarding all the independent. Repeat, regardless of your hypothesis. So I'm doing this because I can't tell you how often people just submit it and they've just looked at one thing and then, what? I didn't know you were saying. It's like, I said it twice. I made it in big font. I highlighted it. I said, repeat. So at this point, if you don't do it, then I'm not going to feel that guilty because I'm doing all I can. Here's a short video from Tina on graphs in Excel, which you can look, it might be helpful. Here's another video I made. It's a little more involved that talks, it's going to review some of the ways that I'm going to talk about and show you right now. So you have different things to look at here. And again, there's all sorts of stuff online as well. And so many, if you just Google things, you'll find so many little helps on how to do things in Excel. And it's super useful. If you don't know Excel, and you're just kind of getting used to it now for this class, I promise you, you are going to be using it for other things as your life goes on. It's not something that is just for physiology. All right, so here we go. We're going to go up here. It says Combined Jumping Lab. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to open it with Excel. Whoops, what happened? Come on, baby. There we go. So here is Excel. I'm going to go onto a blank page just for a moment, just to, if actually I can show you on the very bottom, these are like file folder tabs. So you can go to different sheets. You can add sheets. You can actually do more sheets. Here's the data sheet. Here's another blank sheet, another sheet. This is actually really useful as you start sorting the data in different ways. I usually put my different sorts, different versions of the data sorting on different pages so graphs don't get all mixed up. Basic idea, let me zoom in here a little bit. So it is a spreadsheet. You think of it like a big ledger sheet, which, it used to be, I mean, depending how old you are, I mean, there was like VisiCalc and then Lotus 123. There's all these kind of spreadsheet programs throughout time. But at this point, Microsoft Excel is kind of the standard for the spreadsheets here. I guess you have Google Sheets now too. But it's basically a spreadsheet. And it's got boxes, A's across, A, B, C, D across the top, 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers down there. And every cell has its own address. This one here would just be A1. This would be B1. This would be C1. This would be D1. This would be A11, B11. So it's easy to know where you are. It's just the letter and the number. And then each of these little things here can have different things inside. What can you put in a cell?
Formulations.
So yeah, you can do let's do that last, just because it gets more complicated.
Numbers.
Numbers. So numbers. So you can put a number. I can put a 6 in there. I just put a 6 in this. There's a 6. On the next one, I'll put a 7.25. So notice, if you ever want to know what is actually in this cell, up at the top here, this is the little formula bar. This shows you what's really in there. So I don't know, can you see where I'm wiggling my cursor at the top? If I click in this box, I can see there's a little 6 up there. If I click here, Now you can format these cells to display different ways. I can say, oh, I want this, like I'm going to go to format cell and I'm going to say, I want it to be currency. So now it looks like $6. But if I click on it, it's like, it's just a number 6. But I told it to look like currency. So it says $6. I could say, okay, I'm going to format this one and I want this one to look like, you know, a percentage. Oh, 725%. But you click on it, it's like, you know, it's still, it's, you know, so you can, you know, if I wanted, I could change these all to money. You know, I could say, let's format them both to be currency. Now, oh, currency, I said, dagnabbit, not number, currency. Now it's 725, $7.20, right? It's so it's what's in the cell is exactly the same thing. And then I can change the rounding off. I can go and I can say, let's put more or less. Now it's rounded off to like just the nearest whole number. But if I click on here and I look up in here, it says, oh, it's still 7.25 in the box, even though it's saying $7 here. So just to put that out there, if you're ever curious what's in the actual box, you click on it and then go up to the top. And then formulas. Somebody mentioned formulas. Let's say like a classic thing in, if we're going to have a party, you're going to have the item, you're going to have, yeah, the number, how many of them, you know, the price per, subtotal. And I usually like to make things pretty, so I'll go, can make things colorful, you can add borders, you know, so then, and I can also change how wide things are. If you double click, it comes in to auto fit. So I'm going to have, you know, beer. And actually a 6-pack of beer is probably, I don't know, a good beer is probably more like, let's say $8.50. You know, then we're going to have sodas because not everybody drinks beer. Probably a 6-pack of soda is probably more. I don't know how much. I don't buy soda. About like $4.50 or something for soda. You know, we're going to need chips. You know, a bag of chips. I do buy chips. It's about $3.50. And again, I can want this all dollars. Obviously, you can't have a party without pizza. Like a good pizza is probably going to be at least like, I don't know, $15 for a pizza. And again, I'm going to make these all currency here. And then, you know, we're going to need, we've got like 25 people. So at least 4 6-packs of beer. Let's get a couple of things of soda, 3 things of here, and maybe 2. Actually going to need like, let's say 4 pizzas for everybody. And then subtotal. How are we going to do the subtotal? If I know it's $8.50 per 6-pack of beer and I have 4 6-packs.
Multiply column B to column C.
Exactly. You're just going to multiply this times this. So I can say, so whenever you do a formula, you always, in fact, I should, let me share my screen just so you have it. Formulas in Excel. Always start with equals. This is where people get messed up. It's like they get all confused why it's not working. If you're going to do a formula in a cell, it has to start with an equal sign. You know, and then you can use either cells, you can use B2 times C2, or you can use numbers 2 times B2, or you can, and actually times is an asterisk, divided is, it's just the stuff if you're using computer things. How do you do power if you're using a computer keyboard? If I wanted to do x squared, what would I do?
You use the little caret symbol at the top.
Exactly. It's x caret 2. So if we go back to my example here, if I want the subtotal for beer, again, I'm going to start with the equal sign, equals, and then it's just going to be B3 times C3. So I can just type B3 times, whoops, times C3. And if I hit enter, ka-ching, notice that it calculated for me. If you look in the box, it says 34. In fact, let me just show you here. I'm going to zoom in even more. Whoops. But if I click on this, if you look up in the formula bar, notice what it says. It says it's a formula, B3 times C3. But if you look, you goofy thing. But if you look on the Excel sheet, it says $34. Like if I click on this one though, I look up here and it says 8.5 in there. So if you're not sure, is that an actual number or is that a formula being calculated? Just click on it and look in the formula bar and you'll see what's actually inside the cell. So you can always see what's in there. And then I could say, okay, the formula for soda is going to be B4 times C4, and the formula for chips is going to be B5 times C5, and the formula for pizza is going to be B6 times C6. But that is just a lot of work. And the program is good at figuring out what you want to do. So if you click on a cell that has the formula that you want, that you are going to repeat, but just with small changes. You then, at the lower right-hand corner, there is a little square. It's right near where I have the cursor right now. And if I put the cursor right on it, the cursor is going to turn into this little black cross. So as soon as the cursor has become a little black cross, notice cursor is kind of a big fat plus. Oop. Now it's got arrows. That's not it. There it is. Cursor, it's a little black cross. When it looks like that, it's saying, aha, I am paying attention to the formula in the box. And then if you hit right mouse, right is the, not right, left mouse is the action button. You hold it down, you drag it down, it's gonna say, oh, he wants the same basic formula in these other boxes that he is dragging to. Then I let go of my left mouse button and voila. If I check the formula, B4 times C4. Check the formula here, B5 times C5. Check the formula here, B6 times C6. So this is a really useful thing you'll use a lot. If you have the same formula that you want to just repeat, but just slightly different, you just float the mouse over the little square in the lower right-hand corner, click the left action button, hold it. The left button is also for selecting. I'm doing this with my left button, like click and drag. My right button will always give you context sensitive help. If I'm in some place and I click on the right button, right, it's always going to give me an option of things to do that are useful for wherever I'm clicking. So if you're never sure, left is action or select, right click gives you context sensitive menus. All right, so here is the calculation for the subtotals. And then for the grand total, I need to add them all. So for this one, I am going to say equals. And there are a whole bunch of formulas. If I want to get the formulas, there's different ways to do it. I can say insert a formula, although I'm going to, this little f of x here, if you see where it says insert function, if I click on that, it lets me pick any function I want to insert. It's like average, no, sum. Yeah, I want a sum. I want to add up a bunch of things. I'm going to say okay. And then it says, what do you want to sum up? It actually figured it out. D3, I'm going to just select right here. D3 through D6. That little colon just means D3 and then all the cells up to D6. It's going to just add up D3, D4, D5, and D6. I hit enter. Ka-ching. There is my grand total for my party. Other average, other formulas that we'll use a lot are like average. We could just say average of all these things. We're going to use that today when we look at the average jump for men versus women. You just insert the average function. I'll show you again. We'll see that in detail in a few moments. The nice thing about formulas is they recalculate. You can say like, oh my God, we only have $100 for the party, but this is, so we're over budget. What are we going to do? It's like, okay, instead of getting like some, I don't know, some like Lagunitas, let's just get Budweiser, and now it's going to be only like $4.50 for a 6-pack. Now it's recalculated the price for the beer, recalculated the sum. So all of these formulas recalculate in real time. That's why it's really useful for coming up with budgets. It's also really useful if you just, once the stupid pandemic is done and you can go on like kind of adventures with your friends again, and you're just trying to figure out who owes what after one person paid for dinner and one person paid for this one. You just put it into an Excel spreadsheet and it just calculates everything for you. And it's like, oh, this is my share. And you're going to see Excel is really good just for going on a road trip. It's not just for graphing like biology experiments. So any questions about this so far? Graphs are also really a strong point. Like if I was going to do a graph of how much am I spending per item, that's more categories. I could do, here are the name of the categories. If I hit control key and I can select two things that are disconnected. So using the control key with my finger, I've selected the labels, the things that I have. I've selected the relevant money I'm spending per. And now Excel is going to be super clever. I'm going to go up into insert. I'm going to go up here. That's histogram. Here it is. I'm going to insert a chart. And wait, let's see. Which one is this? Not his. Oh, no, it is this one. Just a column chart. Here we go. And let me get back viewing more normally now. Here it is. Here I have, and whenever you have a chart though, you always have to give me a, tell me what the axes are. You always have to label your axes. So for this, I could go into page layout and let's see, I click the chart. Oh, here, chart design, and I can say add chart element. I'm going to say axis title. Primary horizontal is going to be, food item. And I'm going to add a chart element. My primary vertical is subtotal for item. So here is my chart, and the title for this is going to be like party. Right, so there it is. you're going to be able to do something similar to this if you're trying to look at jump height versus healthy and unhealthy BMI instead of party items and how much they cost. It would be the same idea.
Can you quickly show how you inserted the chart again?
So I went, I'll go back. And yeah, the undo is always useful. So what I did was I selected the labels for the categories. Then I hit the control key, which allows you to add to a separate area. So I'm holding the control key, I'm still holding it down, and I am now selecting the prices. And Excel will be smart enough to figure out that these are the labels that go with these numbers. Then I go up to insert. And then up here, it gives you all these different charts. This one here, this is the column or bar chart. And I just want to click on that. And again, I got to get my view back to normal. And it's just right there. It automatically constructs it. You know, for doing the scatter plots, we're going to show you how to do them more manually. It's actually not such a good idea to let it calculate your scatter plots automatically. It usually messes it up. But for bar charts, it's usually pretty good. You know, and what's nice is you can then take this. I could just select my chart here, copy it, and I could go into Microsoft Word. And I can just paste it here. And I can move it around. I can resize it. So I can then print this out and paste it in my lab book. Like when I'm putting these charts in my lab book, I usually cut them and paste, or I copy and paste them into Word, and then I resize them so they're about the size I want them to be, and then I print them. And then you can actually do more than one even. You can have a few different ones so you're not wasting paper. You can have a few of the ones that you want on the same Word document and then print them out after they have been sized to the appropriate size that you want them. So, but back to Excel. Are there any other questions about the basics of Excel? Okay, so now in the next 17 minutes, we're going to have a whirlwind tour of ways you can approach the data. So back to here, remember I've been doing this all on these, and you can rename. In fact, if I renamed this sheet, I could say this sheet is like Scratchpad. This is where we've just been messing around. You know, Scratchpad, I'm going back to the data, which is the stuff that you have from the module. So this is what it's going to look like when you first bring it up. And what do you notice? You'll notice BMIs are gone. And that is because people's BMIs actually, the BMIs that people type in are usually actually wrong. People calculate them and they mess them up. Computers are way better at doing large numbers of repetitive calculations. So since BMI is just a calculation based on the height and the weight, we're going to let the computer do it. Other things about this before I do that, the color coding is just about the labs. That you guys would have been the gold, like if we were in person, because it's like the dawn. Like you wake up and you're driving to school and you're watching the sun come up over the horizon and the skies are all red and gold. The yellow is the afternoon section. The blue is the night section because the sun's setting. So that's why, like, if you're wondering why is it colored, it's just supposed to be 3 different classes, or it is from 3 different classes. How are we going to be able to figure out the BMI? How are we going to put the BMI in here? Maybe I'm going to go back to my paper here.
Isn't it
you do the weight in kilograms divided by the height in meters squared.
Exactly. Exactly. So if we were to do this as a formula in Excel, what's it going to start with?
Equals.
It would be equals. And then weight in kilograms, that's just in column B. So if I'm, it would be like B2. If let's say I'm doing the first, the first data. And then divided. How do I do divided in the computer land of computers?
Yeah,
It's a slash.
It's a slash.
backslash.
And then height in meters. The height is in column C. This is height, but it's in centimeters. And I need my height in meters. How am I going to convert height that is in centimeters into height in meters? Let's say somebody's 162 centimeters. How many meters is that?
1.62 meters.
It's 1.62 meters. And how do you do that? How do you convert between?
You divide by 100.
It's just dividing by 100, right? It's 2 orders of magnitude. You have to just move the decimal point over 2 places to the left. So all I need to do is divide by 100. This is now in meters, right? And then I just got to square the stupid thing. And by precedence of operators, it's going to do, remember, this is going to happen first. So if you wanted, you could do this, but you don't have to. So this is my formula. And so let's just put it in and see, watch the magic happen. Are there questions about this before I go and do it?
So the parentheses would only be around C2 and 100 for the squaring option, or would you put a parentheses around everything and then square it?
No, remember the squaring is just about the height. If you put
Okay.
if it was squared like that, then it would be different, right?
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so here we go. Wait, this is, what happened here? So I'm going to do BMI is going to equal B2 divided by parentheses C2 divided by 100 caret 2. There it is. There's my BMI, 21.4. And if I want to have that same formula for every subject, I just put my mouse till it turns into a plus, hold down the left button, drag it all the way down, let go, and it's like, holy crap. It just calculated BMI for everybody. Right, that's nice, easy. Then I can clean up the colors. I recommend you clean up the colors because if you don't, then it's going to be hard to know if the data is getting disconnected when you start sorting. So I'm going to select these. I need to turn them yellow. I'm going to go into home. I'm going to go into this little paint bucket and turn them yellow. And these guys here, I'm going to select them. I'm going to go into the paint bucket and I'm going to turn them blue. So now I've got all my data, including BMI. And what do you do whenever you hit some place where you've done some work and you don't want to lose it all if your computer crashes?
Save.
You save. Oh, so we're going to give it a different name. So we call it copy. I'm saving it. So now No matter what happens, I don't have to do this all again from scratch. So does anybody have any questions about how I got to here?
Could you show how you inputted the formula again? Did you just type it into the cell or was there another step you did?
No, I just typed it directly into the cell.
Into the cell below BMI?
Yeah, into the cell where I wanted it to appear.
Oh, okay.
So there we go. So at this point, we're good to start analyzing. So for instance, let's look at calf versus jump. We talked about there was no correlation with just a little bit of data, but let's see if there is with more data. So what I'm gonna do this kind of fast because we're only got 10 minutes here. So I'll show you kind of how this works, but everything I'm doing, I also have redone in those videos that I have in the module. Basic idea, if you're gonna make a scatter plot, I do not recommend that you let it figure it out for you. I recommend you construct it manually the way I'm gonna show you. You have to make sure your cursor is clicked away from the data. If you select near the data and you try to insert a graph, it's gonna like make something up that's garbage. Like that's garbage. That's not what you want. So you got to click someplace away from the data so it doesn't try to help you. And then I'm going to say, all right, insert a scatter plot. So I'm going to make a scatter plot, but as you see, there's nothing here yet. So now I'm going to do, there's lots of places. I can either go up here to select data, or I can put my mouse in here, do the context sensitive menu, the right click. I'm going to select data. So select data. If I am going to look at calf versus jump, then I'm going to want my x-axis to be the calf and their jumps to be the y. So I'm going to add a series. A series is just an x and y pair. I can say, all right, let's add. And if I'm just looking, let's not worry about series name yet. So x values are going to be my calf. I'm going to say, all right, click on this little arrow here. I can just select all the calves. Hit enter. For the Y values, it's going to be the jumps. I click on that. I'm going to get all of the jumps. Hit enter. I usually like to double check D2 to D79, F2 to F79, make sure everything seems lined up. Hit OK. OK. And there it is. The data is on the chart. Here it started at 0. You can see all the points are way off to the side. I'd rather start my axis at 30, spread it out so I can just right click context sensitive menu on the axis. I'm going to format my axis. And I'm going to say, let's let the minimum be 30 and, instead of 0. Spreads it out. There, it's nice. What else? I'm also going to need axis names. I was talking about how that works. Again, I can go into chart design. I'm going to add axis primary horizontal is going to be calf. Circumference in centimeters. You always want to say what it is and what the units are. And my y-axis, add chart element, axis title, primary vertical. It's going to be jump height in centimeters. So here it is. And you can look at it. It doesn't look too interesting. If I want to make it calculate the trend line, I just click on the dots. You'll see some of the dots get highlighted. And again, right click, context sensitive menu. I right click, add a trend line. Ka-ching. There it is. And I can see like, sure, looks like there's no correlation here. So does that make sense for everybody? I'm going to copy all my data, I'm going to go to another page here. I'm going to paste it here. Just get rid of this graph here. What I'm going to do now, let's do another. I'm going to just do this quick again because of the time. I'm going to say, I'm going to insert a graph, insert chart, scatter plot. I'm going to say select data. This time I'm going to have my X value be the heights. And my Y value be the jumps. Okay, okay. Again, the jumps kind of start around 140. So I'm going to start my axis more like at 140 because it's kind of hard to see if anything's happening. Oh, and then I can click on the dots and add a trend line. And why, looky, looky. We do see, like Grace was finding in her smaller data set, there does seem to be a positive correlation. Kind of messy, but there. So again, I would label my axes. So this is the simplest thing you can do is just compare two variables, that one of the dependent variables and one of the independent variables and the dependent variable. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you a couple of more ways to approach it. So first, I will show you something, how to sort your data. So let's get rid of this chart. So notice I still have my main data on my first tab here. Before I start sorting things, copy your data to another page here, because otherwise, if you sort your data, your charts that were made with the data as it's been sorted will all get mixed up. So I'm going to be on sheet 2 here, and now I'm going to select my data. I'm going to go into data, sort, and I'm going to sort by sex. Okay. Now it's put all the females together and all the males together. So now I can see what was the average jump for a woman versus a guy in the class. It's going to be easy. I'm going to make a little thing on the side here. I'm going to say average male jump. Average female jump. And this is just I'm going to insert a formula. I'm going to go up to that little F, insert average. And then I need to just get all the jumps of the guys. Here they are. They're all together because I sorted on male. Average female jump, I'm going to do equals, insert function, average. I'm going to grab all the jumps of the women. Ka-chink. There it is. And then I could just select these, and just like I did with the pizza price, I can just insert a bar chart. And there I have my average male jump. We can see appreciably higher than the average female jump. So that's another way. That's how you can do a bar chart. The last thing I am going to show you is how you can use different types of groups. Let's say I wanted male jumps versus female jumps, but on a scatter plot. So the last thing we're going to do, I am actually going to, we can just do it on this chart since I've got it here. So I've got all the females together, the males together. So it's going to be easy to select jumps just for the men or just for the women. I'm going to put my mouse click away. I'm going to insert a scatter plot. But now I'm going to get a little fancier. I'm going to say select data, add. But now when I'm going to add a series name, since I'm going to be putting both men data and women and I want them separate on the same graph, I'm going to say this first one is just going to be females. And the X values, I'm going to pick the X values. The X values, whoops, hold on, what's going on here? That's the X values for my female. It's going to be the height, but just for the women. And my Y values are going to be the jumps, but just for the women. Well, I can't really see, can I? There it is. Again, double checking 2 to 58, 2 to 58. Good. Now I'm going to add another series. I'm going to call it the males. The X values are going to be the heights, but just for the dudes. And the jumps are going to be the jumps, but just for the dudes. Okay. Okay. I'm going to, again, resize my axis. Let's do again, like 145. Stretch it out. I'm going to actually add chart element. I'm going to add data labels. No, it's not data labels, legends. So there I have males. Males are pink and females are blue because we're trying to get away from all the normal stereotypes. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on just the females and add a trend line. Click on just the males and add a trend line. And I find out something really fascinating. If you're just looking at males or just looking at females, does there seem to be a correlation, much of a correlation between height and jump?
No.
No. But if you just looked at the data straight up, there most definitely was. Right? So this is where I was saying earlier that it's worth looking deeper. If you look and, Grace found a nice correlation. The taller you were, the taller people were likely to jump higher. But it seems much more, not so much about your height, as guys tend to be taller and guys tend to be more powerful jumpers, and women tend to be shorter and women don't jump as high. So on average, taller people jump higher, but it seems to be more about the sex thing than the height thing. So just kind of putting that out there. When you're doing this data analysis, it's not always so clear what's really happening. If I wanted, I can show you one more thing really quick. Here we saw calf versus jump didn't look like much. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take the data here. I'm going to sort it. Let's sort it by BMI. Okay, so I've just sorted by BMI. So the healthy BMI people are from row 3 to row 54. So I'm going to go back into our data here. Row 3 to 54. Row 3 to 54. So I am just looking at the healthy BMI people. And it's like, oh my God, we actually have a positive correlation between calf and jump height if you limit your data just to the healthy BMI people. So it's worth, that's why I said, be curious, go a little deeper. Yes, do calf versus jump, but also, you can find interesting stuff if you get a little creative. If you aren't sure how to use Excel, ask me. In fact, I'm going to officially end the lab now because we're actually slightly past our end time. But you can ask me right now. I'm going to be in office hours. You can email me. We can And again, you have the next 2 weeks to finish this analysis. So if you're confused tonight, don't worry because it's not due tomorrow morning. But eventually you're going to want to get graphs, number them, and then in your discussion, talk about what seems to be correlated, what doesn't seem to be correlated, how it relates to your hypothesis, what else is interesting that maybe you weren't expecting in the first place. So blah, 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 blah. Any comments or questions about all that?
Randomly, do we have a pre-lab due for Thursday? On the syllabus, it says we do. I just wanted to double check.
Oh yeah, okay, so thank you. Okay, this will take two, luckily this is an easy one. So osmometer. Osmometer is basically this thing that has a semi-permeable membrane. And we're going to have distilled water on the outside. And we're going to have some kind of sugar water on the inside. And it's going to be either 40% or 20%. And our dependent variable is just going to be the rate of osmosis. How fast is water, and which way is water going to go? If it's distilled water outside and it's sugar water on the other side of the membrane, which way does the water go? If it's super sugary here and it's distilled water here, which way does the water want to move in osmosis here? I know you know this. We've talked about this before too.
Towards sugar.
Goes towards the sugar. Basically, again, it's kind of cruel to think about, but it's like where I go. Remember sprinkling salt on a slug and watching the poor thing shrivel up as the salt pulls all the water out of the little dude. And hopefully maybe you guys didn't have do that. I don't feel, yeah. So what the heck? So water is going to move in. We're going to see it going up the tube. We can measure how fast it's going up. That's going to be our dependent variable, the rate of osmosis. How fast is osmosis happening? How fast is water crossing the membrane going up there? Our independent variable, we're going to be using different solutions of water. What is ultimately driving the rate of osmosis? I talked about this just a few moments ago in lecture. Osmosis is just a specialized version of diffusion. What was driving the rate of diffusion when we were talking about diffusion versus facilitated diffusion?
Concentration gradient.
Exactly. So the concentration gradient, the independent variable is concentration gradient. The difference across the membrane, right? It's not just the pure concentration. I could have 40% on either side and there'd be no gradient or no osmosis. So don't say your independent variable is just the concentration. It has to be the concentration gradient, the difference. But so we have two different versions of this experiment then. 20 to 0 and 40 to 0. Obviously, the difference between 40 and 0 is a greater gradient than the difference between 20 and 0. Which one would you predict to have a faster rate of osmosis?
40%.
All right, so you guys know everything you need to know to come up with your hypothesis now.